Once again is Hamlet Morule, Executive Head Communications and External Affairs of BPSA. Abdulmalik Halilu is Director of Corporate Services of NCDMB. Sandy Merson, SVP, Asset Operations at Petrofac. Bradford Donohue, CEO IHRDC. Jorge de Morais, GM KAESO Energy Services. Mo Bakum, Technical Secretary, ST CNSL Senegal. Asta Rosa Cisse, Regional Director, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso for AGL. That's our panel. And we're ready to go. It's over to you, Hamlet Morule. Enjoy your session.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we've got these very distinguished panelists who are going to be sharing some very good insights with us. Just for context, Africa has for a very long time identified local content as one of the pivotal catalysts to ensure growth within Africa. And this has been seen through a number of initiatives from several countries within Africa. You look at Nigeria. Nigeria deemed it appropriate in 2010 to enact the Nigeria Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act. Angola did the same. They reviewed their local content regime in 2020 through a presidential decree. Right here in South Africa, we continue in South Africa to implement broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Act. But the questions, that are often asked are whether, in fact, Africa is getting the necessary impact, whether there is political will across the continent, to implement local content. There are arguments from others talking to, are we not discouraging foreign direct investment by insisting that there be local content? So these are the insights, ladies and gentlemen, that we will be getting from this very distinguished panel. And I'm gonna hit directly move directly to the questions, given that the intros were very well done by our MC. I'll start with you, Dr. Halilu. The Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board carries a very difficult but very important mandate, which is to ensure that local content is implemented. What would be those challenges that you've identified, as a regulator, as you try to implement local content?
Okay. Thanks. Good morning, all. So, local content in Nigeria was initiated after several years of oil exploration, production, and it was discovered that the focus of the industry was more around how do we strike first oil, how do we generate revenue from oil, as against how do we ensure in-country value addition. So that was how the conversation around local content started. So there was a country study on what are those binding constraints limiting the participation of Nigerians in the industry. INSOC of a Norwegian firm supported Nigeria in that venture. So the outcome of that study proved that there were some challenges that we needed to address if we're to maximize local content, and we took that seriously. So I'll just focus on three. Now, if you're implementing a new economic development model, because that's what we call local content in Nigeria, you must get the buy-in of everybody. The project promoters that invest their money, you have to sell this program to them that it's good for them. The service companies that are the ultimate beneficiaries have to be prepared to take on that responsibility. And of course, the larger government bodies need to understand that what local content is all about. So the challenge of selling a new idea was there. So that buy-in had to do with ensuring that we had the right change management levers to ensure that we pass the right message, ensure that we have the right structure in terms of governance. So we ensure that IOCs had local content departments so that they can sell the same message that government wanted. And then also the service companies forming associations like PETAN to also ensure that we have the right direction in terms of local content. So buy-in is very important, but then change management provides the solution. The other thing is the infrastructure gap that was identified. As a developing country, it's no surprise that we have those infrastructure constraints. But what we did was to focus capacity development interventions around infrastructure. Uh, as at the time we started local content, the contribution of manufacturing to the GDP was less than 10%. So you can imagine an industry where a typical EPC project, 50% of the input is on manufactured materials, and then you have this gap. So we also intensified our energy on how to develop manufacturing capabilities, and we initiated the equipment component manufacturing initiative. So making sure that the infrastructure deficits is not a limiting factor is where we also invested in establishing industrial parks. And then the other thing is local content is not at all cost. You have project promoters that want to maximize revenue, and then you have a largely evolving supplier industry. So there's a premium cost associated with a country that has low per capita energy consumption, low manufacturing base. So the costs initially was an issue. So we needed to introduce levers that will cushion those costs. So we came up with the Nigerian Content Intervention Fund, which provided single-digit interest rates to our suppliers, so that will reduce the overall cost of service delivery. Then we also invested heavily in technology. NCDMB has been the first MDA rank in terms of ranking for 3 successful years because of our investments in automation of our processes. So that way we have made it simplified the process of engaging the board. So ease of doing business also has an impact on reducing cost of service delivery. So these are some of the challenges, but then these are some of the solutions that we have provided. I'll stop here for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Halilu. And very interestingly, you raise a critical point which talks to what would often be demanded by the various authority bodies that primarily talks to technology transfer. So I'm going to move to Dr. Baku and focus firstly on that very element that Dr. Halilu started with, that talks to automation, technology transfer. I would want to get your view on it and also share your experiences on the different mechanisms that one needs to put in place in order to ensure that in fact a local contact program becomes successful.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the very interesting question. So, and the opportunity to take part of this panel and to share some view from the perspective of Senegal, which is a new player in the oil and gas field. Because as you already know, we studied oil production only last year, and the first gas we have it at the beginning of this year. And this came with a number of hopes, opportunities, but also challenges. Challenges in terms of expectation. And the question is here, how in Senegal somehow we anticipate those opportunities in terms of local content. And I'm just going to give some contextual element before answering to your question. We have the law in 2009, the law regulating local content with a specific approach when it comes to how we design the institution. We have a committee and a technical secretary, which I'm leading, which is in charge of enforcing the law. But, really strong enforcement of the law entered into force only in 2020, 2022. And building new institution comes with challenges to getting the institutional framework right and also to build the credibility. And the second thing the challenge that we that we face. There are currently 2 projects, on the way on the oil and gas sector. In the Sangomar project, for instance, in terms of local content, somehow a number of contract was already passed before even we have like this specific framework regulating local content law. In the gas sector that we share with Mauritania, which is a specific, cross-border project, including 2 countries, there was a specific challenge in terms of how we're going to design a specific local content regulation that's going to be specifically applicable to the project. So those are somehow, contextual elements. Now, reverting to your question and what the initiative that the government has taken in order to foster local content, there are like 2 dimensions: what we have in the law and what we try to enforce. And in this regard, on Monday, I attended a very interesting masterclass from Nigeria, and I must say, when we look at the law, the design of the institution, the initiatives, we have learned a lot. We draw a lot from somehow the experience of Nigeria. And I really would like to thank them for having this kind of, leadership in designing law and also testing it. It helped us actually to leapfrog on what they are already doing and learning from their mistake. In terms of basic orientation of the law, it's basically the same thing. We have a platform that regulate market, so the procurement process in the oil and gas, when it comes to market, somehow it's overseen, it's controlled by us, by the government as a secretariat, with a number of criteria. The second thing is how we gonna foster somehow human resources. Senegalese people, the youth that have strong expectation in the field. That also in the law, from the basic standpoint, we give priority to Senegalese, but giving priority is one thing. But how you're gonna have, human resources that have all the skills, the certifications, the knowledge in order to be competitive in the industry. And in this regard also, the government has put forward a number of policies, a number of initiatives in order to help somehow foster and have critical human resources by putting into place what we call a specific institute, INPG, National Institute of Petroleum and Gas, which only focus on training human resources that will be able to compete, to be able actually to find business in the industry. And I'm really happy to report that there are a number of engineers that today work on the field in the different projects in GTA and Sangomar. They're from Senegal, they trained from Senegal, and they have their first experience in Senegal thanks to the INPG. My colleague from Nigeria spoke about a specific fund that are put in place, and this is also an initiative that we drove from Nigeria. The government put into place a local content somehow development fund in order actually to support the training of human resources, certification, and also help companies. It's still new. We still have some challenges, but because the way somehow the fund should have been somehow have like put money on it, somehow it's not operational yet. There is a tax aspect which is still somehow in the process of being enforced. Now, coming back to the issue of technology transfer, I think it's very important when we talk about local content and talk about transformation, industrialization, and reducing the technology gap. Technology transfer play a key role. But I think there are a number of issues that one has to deal with before making it effective. In the law, in Senegalese law, somehow technology transfer in an obligation. We put it in the law. You have to first technology transfer, somehow encourage joint venture. But how do you materialize it? Here, there is a number of issues that one has to deal with. First, the question we should ask is there like the framework nationally? Is it ready actually to absorb technology? Today, if we grant all the opportunities for the Senegalese somehow framework to build an FPSO, do we have the technical knowledge in order to do it in Senegal? So even if we talk about technology transfer, it has to be done gradually. And I think one important aspect is to focus on transfer of know-how transfer of skills, and also build human capacity and start from what we can do. The second element, and I think this is also legal, which is technology comes with cost. It involves a lot of R&D, a lot of financial cost, and it comes with a lot of intellectual property right. A couple of weeks ago, I discussed with the CEO of a French company which manufacture a technology piece in the Senegalese FPSO. I think it's called Swibel, I think. And then he told me that, this specific, piece that is part of the FPSO, it has not less than 40 patents in it. And what do you mean when you talk about patent? It's protected. You have rights. So now, how do you balance somehow this objective of fostering technology transfer with accepting, respecting the IP rights? And I think also it's very important for African countries to have a very specific understanding on what we talk about when it comes to intellectual property right. When I discuss with people and stakeholders in the field, the feeling I have is that they think about intellectual property right as absolute rights. I had the chance to do an LLM on international intellectual property law, but when analyzing IP and issue of technology transfer, one important aspect that we always forget, we oversee, is the balance we should have between protection and also access. And when we talk about access, in the IP field, there is built-in flexibilities termed as, flexibility and limitation. A patent is a patent, but in some conditions, you are required, even as a patent holder, somehow to make access to your technology transfer. And I think when building strategies with regard to legal local content in terms of technology transfer, this is also issues that we have to think about to really know what are the rules that are applicable, what the rules allow us, and in order actually to repeat. So I'm gonna stop there and maybe come back with follow-up comment on the topic. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could move on to you, Mrs. Sisse. Your organization has quite a good footprint within Africa. It would be interesting to get your perspective and your experiences in the implementation of local content within the different areas that you've operated in.
Thank you for your question. I'm delighted to be here. Concerning local content for Africa Global Logistics, have built a strong and credible track record across Africa. For AGL, Africa Global Logistics, we are in Africa to grow with Africa. So I summarize this commitment in 3 points. The first one is building strong partnership with local stakeholders. We seek actively to find and to have strong partnership with local actors, but not local actors stay around us, but work with us. It's important to have engaged actors, engaged and passionate and experienced to work with us. It's to know how to meet client expectation and how to grow our businesses together. It's very important, the idea is the complementarity. It's important to bring our experience, our capacity of financing to other experience and together to build that strong partnership. The second key point, it's developing talent and transferring skills. For AGL, is not only good intention. We formalize clear policies to partner with schools, with university, but on top of that, we have a Pan-African regional training center, which train young people, but we also, across all our subsidiaries, offer benefit from internship to let this young African have a real exposure on the industry, but also boosting the employment. Boosting the employment is very important. For that, we need to have also some partnership with people who have the knowledge to transfer these skills to all the young Africans. And the third point, maybe it's important too, is to know that this local content, it's a vision and it's a long-term implementation. It's not like you decide it here, if we have to do it here. Now, for that, we have to keep a constant dialogue with the authorities who make the law, but also the actors of the sector to always adjust the policies to the reality.
Yep. Yeah. I'm detecting a very clear thread that talks to collaboration, that talks to partnership, that talks to determining achievable objectives and delivering on them as and when you can. I'm gonna move now to an entity, Mr. Donohue, that has been in this game for over 50 years, being a global company that has been implementing some of these programs, particularly in your case, I believe in Angola and in Nigeria. What is it that you can share with us? There's actually one angle that I'm very interested in. How do you implement these, in a manner that becomes a strategic imperative for the company as opposed to a compliance requirement?
Sure, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel with my colleagues here today. So we're sort of an interesting group here on this panel because we're a training provider. We've been in the business, as you say, for over 50 years, and we've worked in Africa since the 1970s. Personally, one of my first projects was in 2005 in Nigeria with Chevron. And there, I'll just tell a quick story. We were piloting a competency program, and the competency program was fairly new. And so during the first pilot assessment in the terminal, there was a fellow who we assessed. And after the assessment, he ended up as 10% competent. And when I would go and visit on a monthly basis down to the Niger Delta to show the results to the GM of operations, I tried to avoid showing his results. I said, I can't show this. I can't show this. But on occasion, I'd show it, and they'd ask the question and so forth. About a year and a half in, he had gone through and done a reassessment, and he showed at 87% competent for those technical competencies. And I said to the terminal superintendent, I said, do you know this fellow? And he said, of course I do. I said, can you tell me the story? He said, well, when he first joined the organization, that's when the assessment took place, and he was 10% competent. But a year and a half later, he went through the competency. He understood what the competency requirements were. He went through the training. He developed himself. There were coaches that helped him along the way. And as my colleague said, this is a process, right? This is a process. We have to lay the groundwork so that Africans, so that the local nationals can build their competencies and establish what the requirements are and what it looks like, and then deliver the resources to help empower them to build that competency within their organization. So we've worked certainly in Nigeria and in Angola. We've also worked across the continent in Uganda, in Mozambique, in Tanzania, and Kenya, and so forth. We've trained leadership. We've also trained operators and technicians. We believe that in order to help improve someone's life, they need education. Starting with that skill development, knowledge development enables them to build the community, to build their family, to build the company, to build the country, and to help with that wealth generation. So we think that that's really important. We believe that technology transfer is really important. We think that that's in the betterment of sort of society, and we play it both on the operator side as well as the national oil company side, as well as regulators and so forth, because we also want to help improve the conversation between operators and national entities. In that, there was a woman from Nigeria, Sao Tome, JDA, who took some of our training because she wanted to be in a better place to negotiate with the operators as they were negotiating large agreements. And we love that piece. Finally, from our own perspective as a company, in 2006, we created a wholly owned subsidiary in Nigeria. In 2010, there were some new content laws that were passed. And at that time, we found a local investor who'd been our partner since the 1980s to take a majority ownership in IHRDC Nigeria. And today, as I look at that organization, I'm incredibly proud of what we've created. It's all of our employees are Nigerians. We have Nigerian trainers and assessors going offshore to conduct assessments of staff for operators. We have them coaching folks. And so we've become a Nigerian organization in our Nigerian entity. And we just think it's the best thing for sort of the global growth and development that we have.
Yeah, I've made a mental note on one critical point that you've just mentioned that talks to ownership. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
For now, let me just move on and maybe invite Mr. Morais as an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur who is involved in local content, just to share with us your views around the importance of local content.
Well, Hamlet, thank you for the question. I'm grateful to be here. And very quickly, just also jumping on what was said before, and just putting the point of, I'm a local entrepreneur. So I'm Angolan and started my company in Angola, expanded into Namibia, and next year we'll be in Mozambique as well. And why am I saying that? Because we have a different point of view. Yes, we need collaboration. Definitely we need education. We also need international companies coming in and doing their part. We need policies, we need institutions. But we also need to understand that we have different interests and priorities. For example, it was said that it's a process, it takes time. True. But at the same time, as a local, we don't have that much time. We don't have that much time. Why? What we imagine is that in 2050, we will have the double of population in our continent. So we're talking passing from 1 billion persons to 2 billion persons. So you need to house these people, feed these people, educate these people. So how do you do that? We need to create jobs. So local content for us, it's a priority, and it's an urgent priority. It's not something that we can wait. So it's important that we create policies that support that kind of urgency and that make sure that we can create local champions. At the end of the day, this is what will support our economies. There is, and funny enough, I loved your introduction because you said that local content might be a challenge for foreign direct investment. Now, I believe that if we have strong local champions, if we have a strong, vibrant economy, it will attract foreign direct investments. Why? Because it means that we have a strong economy that is sustainable. So my point of view is that local content is extremely important, and policies, the environment needs to support the growth of these champions. What I see on the ground is, for example, We built a base in Ludritz, in the south of Namibia. When we built this base, one of the things that we did is that we collaborated with local companies. So we are injecting funds into the economy. We hired local people from Ludritz itself. So again, we are creating employment here. And of course, we need training. We collaborate with international companies as well. I mean, most of our clients are international companies. So it's yes, it requires collaboration, and it's also necessary that everybody understands that it's urgent, we don't have that much time, and we need to make it happen today.
Yeah, interesting. Last.
But not by least.
Definitely not, Mr. Merson. So Petrofac has interestingly a global presence. You've got a presence in most, if not all, continents as we speak currently. I'm not going to ascribe a specific question to you, but I would be interested to know from you what your views are on any of the questions that have been posed. And I do that particularly because I believe you would bring quite interesting insights based on your presence globally. So go for it.
No.
What do you have to share with us?
No, thank you very much. And yeah, really interesting to hear the different panelists' views, talking about the sort of the carrot and the stick of, funds versus policy and how that's developed local content. You mentioned there that, Petrofac has a global presence, but let's be clear, our delivery model is about local delivery. We want to employ local people. We want to nurture the supply chain, and we want to be developing the next generations so they are ready for when the production and assets are ready to go. So what does that look like in practice with Petrofac? I'm sitting next to a fellow sort of Ivorian here, and we're sharing some chat before we came in. What we've seen, in the Ivory Coast in the last couple of years is major change. Huge amount of investment coming into the country, the implementation of, the new local content decree, which compared to, our friends in Nigeria, long time difference between the implementation. So very early stages, but what I would say is, the relationship with the regulator has been excellent. The way we've worked with DGH and the way they've worked with us has been, a great way to develop local content in the country. Similar to, as we spoke about AGL, the future is in the young in the country. So it's engaging with universities, it's putting in intern programs in place, it's shadowing programs to ensure that we're, accelerating people up through the various levels for the assets that we support with CNR in the Ivory Coast. So there's definitely, I would say, some common themes between us all that would be interesting to further examine.
I'm gonna zone back to you, Brad. So you mentioned a very interesting point earlier on. So in South Africa, we have a similar legislation that apportions targets of ownership, in order to drive local content. And there are sectors of the public analysts who view such prescriptions as discouraging foreign direct investment. Now, local content is sometimes seen by many as training. I like the perspective that has just been brought onto the table that talks to preferential procurement, that talks to enterprise and supplier development. But you've brought a key one that talks to ownership. And I would like to get everyone's perspective on that one. Because there are varying views on that one that no, don't force international companies to share their ownership with local members. How did you transcend that particular challenge, if I can call it that? And I invite everyone to comment after Mr. Donohue's comments.
Sure. So First off, as a foreign company, we'll call it a foreign company, as an international company coming into countries in Africa and around the world, because Africa is not unique in the sense of trying to have local content laws. One challenge is simply understanding what the laws are and the policies are, and then hoping that they don't change too radically over time, because the change is very challenging from an investment perspective. We have various entities around the world. One of them, as I mentioned before, is in Nigeria, that we started with a wholly owned subsidiary. And over time, we saw that the local content laws that were being passed suggested that we needed to get serious about having local ownership, not just training within the country, but also bringing that local ownership within the company. It was a challenge. We've had a local partner there for, as I said, since the 1980s. He's still our partner today, and currently owns a majority shareholder of the organization. So it was a long conversation, but in the end, it has really worked out in that way. In other countries that require more of a total local ownership perspective, it's very challenging for us to make investments where we're investing and in some ways hoping that that local owner is going to be is going to work in the best interest of our organization. So there we take a strategy of more partnership with local organizations, and that's sort of the approach that we have typically taken, where that the policies are a little bit more stringent in that regard.
Yeah.
But where there's opportunity for international investment and opportunities for growth in our particular product areas, service areas, then certainly we look at that very seriously. But finding the right partner is incredibly important.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, ma'am.
We believe in partnership. I think that maybe take some example, it's better. We have a strong partnership, for example, in Senegal with TLS, but also in Nigeria sector, oil and gas. In Ivory Coast, we believe that now we can have good partners. Those were there for many years, like
Yeah.
ICM, but also new partners for logistics and oil, Aliment Logistique. This we build together. We cannot do all alone. It's impossible. So we have you need some expertise for training. We need expertise for training, maybe in maintenance, to be sure that we can offer the job that the youth need for this sector. It's very important to know that today we don't have all the skills on the market. We have to build it, and to build with partnership.
Yeah.
But and just to build on that, as an international company coming into Ivory Coast, we pulled together a supplier day, and we brought all the local suppliers together. And the amount that I learned from that day of, the DGH came along to support it, was the skills that are already in the country, the way that companies could work together. And, we've got some strategic partners that we work with in the Ivory Coast, and they're helping us and we're helping them. We're sharing our systems, our tools that we've developed around the world, and, bringing their experience. And, we spoke a bit about technology earlier. It's that transfer of skills and knowledge that, we find real value in.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe moving on to some other very topical issue. I think in my introductory remarks, I did mention that there's always a question that is posed around the political will to ensure that local content is effective, is implemented in an efficient manner. It differs from one country to the other, of course. But there is that, general thread that talks to, or a question that continuously is asked around whether, in fact, there is sufficient political. Partnered with that is then whether there should be more sanctions or punishment, that is included within the legislation to enforce. And I use firmly the word enforce, You know, and others argue that that doesn't work. It requires willingness of companies. So I'll move on to my other colleagues.
Okay.
Yeah, and hear you out on that particular one.
Thank you, Chair. If you allow me, I would like to revert very quickly to the issue of ownership and if
Yeah, start there.
and I
That's
think
all
it's
right.
very important.
Yeah.
If you look our fundamental law in Senegal, the constitution, it says clearly that the natural resources belongs to the people. And now the question we have to ask ourselves is how are we going to do and the institutional framework that the collaboration that we're gonna put into place so that the resources really have an impact on people. And I think here we should not see local content as hindering or negatively impacting from direct investment. From direct investment is needed in terms of finance, in terms of technology, in terms of knowledge, in terms of know-how. But I think it's very important also for us, our African countries, to have a long perspective from today to 15, 20, 30 years ago, how these resources, how this, collaboration is going to impact on our economy, on the possibility for that, for our national companies to become operator, to do that things that we are not able to do a few years ago. And I think this really need to be stressed, and for our international partners also to understand that you go invest, but it has to be a balance, somehow collaboration. It should be a win-win and win-win situation. And I think it's very important. Now reverting to the issue of political will, and I think everything starts and ends with political will. The creating the law, building the institution, funding the institution, giving the institutions, the freedom in order actually to apply the law without interferences comes with political will. And I think this is also something that has to be stressed. And I think in the context of Senegal, we have a new government only last year, and I think this political will is there. And fostering the enforcement, strong enforcement of local content, it's really there. Sanction is very important, but I think even before coming to sanction, providing the tools that somehow compliance is very important. But I think if there is real violation, also sanction has to be there. And here the tricky aspect of sanction is that in the contractual aspect in the oil and gas sector, everything is tied. And even you talk about sanction, you always have to be careful on the impact it's gonna have, on the state in general. As an authority, you can take a sanction, it can be challenged. Is it justified? It could lead to arbitration. So even in the design of the law, somehow, even in from an institutional perspective, what you put in the local content law has to be in coherence with the general framework that regulating your relationship with your international partner.
Interesting. Time is against us.
Wow.
So I'm going to move on to closing remarks. But of course, gentlemen, if you have comments on these last comments,
If you allow me.
yes, please go ahead.
So, and I'll answer your question, and I'll go back to the first question.
Okay.
Growth will be limited to your environment. Okay, this is what happens. So political will is important, and it's important because it's the one that actually sets the environment where we grow. And that will set our limitation. Going very quickly back to the ownership issue, there are a couple of things here that are important. Sovereignty of any country is important, right? When we have crisis, what happens is that if your economic depends mostly on international companies, during crisis, these international companies will go back to their country to minimize costs and make sure that they can survive. So what will be left in country? Not much, because we don't have the structure to sustain our economy in most African countries. So it's important that in that perspective of ownership, we also have a strong perspective of capability. Ownership without capability doesn't mean anything. So if the ownership doesn't add value, into the partnership, it's not sustainable, and it actually creates a problem. At the end of the day, as you rightly said, most of the time local content is seen as costly, slow, and not safe. So we need to make sure that when we talk about ownership, we have all these aspects in perspective, and we add value. If that is the framework in which the partnerships or the ownership is made, then there shouldn't be any problem, because the international partner will see that ownership as an added value. And you mentioned sanctions. Yes, they are important into the framework of our business, but the core structure needs really to be, are we adding value? When that is at the center, we shouldn't have the problems that we have in regards of ownership. And I close.
Okay. Yeah.
Halilu?
Yeah. Thank you. In terms of the ownership conversation, so we have been lucky in the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Act. We sort of ring fenced participation of indigenous companies to land and swamp so that they can build the right capabilities and dominate that space. For deep water operations, international oil companies can easily play in that space. And I can tell you that we have seen even Fortune 500 companies, the likes of Halliburton, Baker Hughes, who have made their mark in terms of revenue in the US, also playing in Nigeria. So that is a classical example of how we have created an enabling environment that has attracted the best in class international service companies to operate. The likes of Technip, Schlumberger, they are very much present in Nigeria. Nobody's asking them to dilute their ownership. So what we encourage is partnership, technical partnership, so that our indigenous companies can also build the right capabilities, especially as we move into deep water operations, which is highly sophisticated, and we recognize the need for us to get the best, since local content does not compromise standards. In fact, Petrofac has been patronized by us when we were doing the skill gaps. We wanted to know the priority skill areas to focus on local content. So we engaged them. We gave them the upcoming projects, and they were able to identify where we should focus our energy on. And that's why when I was making the speech this morning, I talked about all those skill areas, a product of part of what we did and part of what PTTF did in terms of skill gap study. So in the area of sanctions, the way we have approached it is the law is very specific. Upon conviction, yeah, there's a penalty associated with that 5% of the project, or you stop the project. But what we did was we were very pragmatic. We came up with administrative sanctions. So in the history of NCDMB, we've not been in court with any company. Some we have started court cases and then we came back. Why? Because again, I talked about change management. We were very deliberate. Each time we want to initiate a policy, we engage the industry. So everybody has an input in what we do. So that buy-in is already cultivated. And then service companies, operators also have local content structures within their system to interface with us. When we roll out policies, templates for compliance monitoring, we engage them, we take them through line by line what it entails. So we hold workshops, we're very strong in engagement. Then where there's contravention, what we do is we have different layers. The sanction regime starts with where we notify you, and then there are instruments of authority that NCDMB issues, like expatriate quota, Nigerian content equipment certificate. We hold on until you comply. So that way there's an engagement. It's not the bullying type of regime. So to a large extent, that way we have been able to get them to fit into line, and it's a very, very closely relationship that we have been able to cultivate between the operators and the regulator. Yeah.
Very interesting, I must say, and the message that really I'm getting from all of you, fundamentally, is that that let there always be clarity on the regulatory framework, and it must be consistently applied. And and if that is done, there will be coherence between all the players or all the stakeholders within within the different countries that you operate in. I'm gonna give you the very last bite in 30 seconds for you to make your closing remarks. Let me start with you, and then we'll just follow through.
Sure. So 30 seconds. I think it's about culture. And I think it starts from a leadership perspective across the whole organization. So if the culture is right, if the culture suggests that local content is what's important to the organization, you can achieve it, but it needs to be over a long time period, a long-ish time period, taking into account we need to do it today. And you have to be very careful about adding too many penalties, because it creates the wrong behavior. And these investments that the companies are making are hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. So you don't want the wrong behavior to happen.
Yeah, sure. Mrs. Sissa?
Yes, local content, it's about creating added value, and we cannot do it if you are a multinational or if you are alone with a local player. For us, it's combine forces for the authorities, like in Côte d'Ivoire, DGH, but also all the actors, GES, Petrogas, for example. But it's a long term. We have to build it step by step and adjust with the ground to the vision. And Africa Global Logistics, we are here to grow with these local actors, to be strong and to create an ecosystem strong and reliable.
Okay. Yeah. So been quite a bit of comment made about timelines, and my reflections from the last couple of days here. I've sat in and heard about Equatorial Guinea's next licensing round, growth in Senegal coming, and we quite often get fixated with lead times for parts, pipelines, rig availability. But I think if we look at what's the longest lead time, it's about developing the local people to be ready for when these assets are coming on stream, when they're being built. And I think that's an area that I think we need to work harder on to use those funds, to get them in place, that there is resources and workforce available locally to develop and make these investments successful.
Go ahead, my brother.
Two last comment. I think we have we have to have a vision when we talk about local content. Today we talk about access to market, training, certification, local ownership. But what is the vision? And I think for the vision is in the long term that we will be able actually to be independent, sovereign, and do everything by ourselves. And I really like a quote from the Director General of Petrofac in Senegal. Said, instead of talking about local content, we should at some point talk about national content. And I think it means everything. And I think the last thing is we should not lose sight on the very objective about what we are talking about this and what we are doing. Because at the end of the day, the measure of our success will be the impact it's going to have on people, on the price of electricity, on gas price, and the impact it's going to have on the transformation on the industry. We're regulating, we're applying the law, but I think from a policy perspective, we should not lose sight on our very, very important end goal. Because at the end of the day, our population that really have a strong hope from our natural resources will assess what we have done or not done somehow based on those criteria.
Well, on my side, local content needs to be a balance act, and it needs to be a solution. It cannot be a problem. And unfortunately, most of the times when I hear us talking about local content, it's from a problem perspective, but local content needs to bring positive results to our clients, most of the time the operators. It needs to open markets to our technical partners, because today, well, we need those partners, and it also needs to be a solution for our nation. So it needs to create jobs. So it needs to be a balance act between these three perspectives. The other thing that I would say to close is that we're talking about local content, national content. I like to talk about regional content. We need to also start to think about local content from a regional point of view. I mean, we are producing oil in Angola. Now there will be production of oil in Namibia. I mean, how can we make this work? How can we use the experience from Angola in Namibia and in the southern region?
Okay, thank you. So, when I was illustrating the challenges local content, I talked about capacity gap and how we're closing those gaps. But what is more important is capacity utilization. So it's important that when you attract investments, imagine a company investing $100 million to establish a fabrication yard, and there's no flow of fabrication work. It's quite chaotic. So when we are discussing local content, we should also be discussing enabling business. So we must ensure that we simplify the process for getting contracts in the industry so that there's a consistent flow of projects. Without projects, there's no local content. We must also ensure that we invest in skills. We must also ensure that the different government machineries appreciate the value of local content so that there are no administrative bottlenecks in terms of granting approvals. For us in NCDMB, we have invested significantly in making sure that we're leading the campaign in terms of ease of doing business through our automation process, and even coming to different African countries to sell the local content market. We appreciate that fact that no country can deliver local content alone. So we needed to talk to our fellow African brothers on the importance of embracing regional approach to local content. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of our discussions today. And primarily, really, I've not had any strong negative sentiments around local content from any of the panelists today, which is a very, very positive indicator around the fact that there is willingness. My last point would simply be that let these not only be conversations, let these be conversations that leads us to a real and very inclusive growth within the continent. Thanks to the panelists. May I invite you to give them a hand of applause, please.